Good vibes! Welcome back to another episode of the Hoop Genius podcast brought to you by NBA 2K23. BJ Armstrong a momentary, and I feel like, BJ, before I start this episode, we need to issue an apology.
To
someone we disrespected by not mentioning them in the last episode. Because we talked about players who deserve to be an all-star, and there's one name that one of our loyal listeners reminded me on social media that we forgot to mention. And I feel that given the success their team is having, they definitely should have been mentioned. And that player is Jalen Brunson of the New York Knicks, who are absolutely red hot right now. BJ, they've won, 8 games in a row now? Things are looking good in New York. The NBA were criticized for having them on the Christmas Day slate against the Sixers, but they're the hottest team in the league right now. What are you seeing from the Knicks that's really impressed you in this turnaround? Because for me, not only has the play of Jalen Brunson been impressive, McBride has been very impressive as well. The young fellas, Grimes, Isaiah Hartenstein off the bench. What have you seen from the Knicks?
Well, what I've seen from the Knicks is certainly over the last, they're on a 7-game winning streak right now.
Is it 8 now?
7, something like that.
Yeah, 8.
Winning is 7, 8 games they've played in this league, and they have had, and they've won all of those games. Just a week or two ago, there was a big uproar there in New York about what's going on, what's the direction of this team.
Yeah.
And suddenly they've turned it around here, and that's the NBA. The NBA is a league of runs, right? One time, one day you're down, and next day you win 7, 8 games, and suddenly you're the hottest team in the league. As they like to say, winning covers up a multitude of sins. Now, I'm going to give the Knicks credit because it's very difficult to win, and you have to show up, and they have done that. I think Jalen Brunson has come in. He's stabilized the position in some regards because he comes out, he plays, and he comes out there and he gives them a steadying force out there while he's playing. Now, I think they're about 4 or 5 games now over 500. Okay, and with that comes expectations. New York is a very difficult place. I think right now this team, they've won, but for whatever the reason has been, they've been able to catch teams when players are out. Like, for instance, I'm not taking away anything last night, right? They caught the Warriors last night without Steph Curry. They caught the Atlanta Hawks, for instance, without what's the kid they just got from the Spurs? He was out. With the Atlanta Hawks, not Trae Young, but what's his running mate?
DeJounte Murray.
DeJounte Murray. They caught the Murray kid. Now, those are significant, right? And the reason those are significant is because they're winning games, in my opinion, that they're supposed to win. And that's the first sign of a good team. So what I've learned about the Knicks in the 7 to 8 game stretch is they have a team that should win games when they have, the better talent, right? They beat the Bulls, for instance, in back-to-back games. This is a good team. This is a very, very solid team.
They've been winning games by a solid margin. I think it's the average of 17 points in the wins on their winning streak. So it's not like they're just scraping through. They're doing quite well.
No, I'm not taking away anything from them. I'll make this clear. I'm not taking away anything. This team. Let me go back. Let me look this up so that way. We could just go through this winning streak. I mean, it's been amazing to watch.
They beat the Warriors by 38 points last night.
So this all started in Cleveland. Let's just go back to Cleveland.
Okay.
This all started in Cleveland on December 4th. Okay, so they've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Cleveland here. They beat Atlanta. They beat Charlotte. They beat Sacramento, and De'Aaron Fox didn't play that game. I remember watching that game. They beat Charlotte. Okay, they beat the Bulls. They beat Indiana. They beat Golden State, and they beat Golden State. I mean, with the exception of Cleveland, if I remember, I'm not sure who played in that Cleveland game when they played, right? But I remember watching the Atlanta game for sure. Murray got hurt in the very first 4 or 5 minutes of the game. They should beat Charlotte. They caught a break. They beat Sacramento without De'Aaron Fox. That's a huge, because they've been playing good basketball. Then they catch the Bulls back to back. They beat a good Indiana team on the road. Okay, that was good. That went right down. I think that was a very close game, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
And then they catch Golden State. Okay, and then they catch go. They've won the games they're supposed to win. Mm-hmm. That to me is an NBA. That's the first sign of a good team. So now
they've got the Raptors coming up and the Bulls coming up, so they should win those two, take their winning streak to 10, and then Christmas Day early tip against the Sixers will be the real test. Okay. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yeah. That's all I'm saying is this: the first sign of a good team, win the games you're supposed to win. That's how this works. Now, I'm not going to get too high with this, but also when they lose 2 or 3 in a row, I'm not going to get too low with this. And that's my point here with the Knicks is I want to see the Knicks when they play Boston, when they play Philly, when they play Milwaukee, when they play the Denver Nuggets, when they play the Memphis Grizzlies, when they play those teams, then suddenly now you start saying who's the hottest team in the league. I'm not taking away anything from those other teams, but when Dejounte Murray, when he's not in the lineup, that's for the Atlanta Hawks. Mm-hmm. The Bulls right now, they're struggling. I know they won last night, but they are really struggling right now. Okay, they are really struggling. Sacramento without De'Aaron Fox, that's a big in their lineup. And then okay, if you beat Cleveland when their roster is full, okay, you start to catch my attention. Okay, you start to catch my attention on games like that. Charlotte, they've been depleted this year. Yeah. I think LaMelo just got back a couple games ago. Okay, so that to me is where the Knicks are at. This is the first time they're consistent, and I will give the Knicks this: they have a rotation. You mentioned a couple guys, McBride. You mentioned what's the kid that just stepped into the starting lineup at the 2? My name was going to blank on the names. Here.
That'll be Quentin Grimes.
Grimes here. And so they've settled into their rotation. Now, the big test for them is once they start, if they go on a 7 or 8 game winning streak after the Christmas day game, okay, when they start playing those levels of teams.
The schedule to them is they've got the Mavericks, and then they've got the Spurs and the Rockets, which should be 2 wins. They got the Suns, then they've got the Spurs and the Raptors, and then they got the Bucks. So the schedule's it's not looking too tough for the New York Knicks throughout January.
But win those games, because everyone's going to play the same team. When you win the games you're supposed to win, it's not about who's tougher or not. This is the NBA. You can't I'm playing the Spurs. No, the Spurs have good players. So I'm playing, Indiana. Those guys have good players. I'm playing Washington. Washington go in last night. They beat the Phoenix Suns. Win the games you're supposed to win. That's the first sign. That's the first sign saying, we could be good. Win those games. Because when you get to the playoffs, you got to win those games. Mm-hmm. That's the lesson. Win the games you're supposed to win. And then also be in the games that maybe you're not supposed to win, but hang around long enough to give yourself a chance to win. And then now suddenly you're, okay, man, we could be really good. And then if you have a great player who's able to play at that level on a consistent basis, now you're talking about doing something. So right now, give the Knicks credit. They're winning those games. They're playing hard. They're playing much better on the defensive end, and they're winning the game. So now if they start losing those games, then I think heads will turn. Okay. And that's the key. That's the key to an NBA season. It's a long season. but win the games you're supposed to win, especially at home.
Well, speaking of winning games you're supposed to win and losing games, the Chicago Bulls have been doing a lot of losing. And a report from our friend Shams Charania, who is not the owner of a NBA meme page on Twitter, apparently, he says that multiple league sources and sources close to the organization say that LaVine and the Bulls are not seeing eye to eye. Over the past few weeks, there's been palpable feeling across various parts of the franchise of a disconnect over LaVine's situation in Chicago. And then he continues to say the Bulls have held multiple team meetings to try and work out their issues, and that's included one-on-one face-to-face sit-downs between DeRozan and LaVine. Multiple sources with direct knowledge who were granted anonymity because they were unauthorized to speak publicly on the matter have told The Athletic. Even more, multiple sources and sources close to the organization say LaVine and the Bulls are not seeing eye to eye. So Zach LaVine apparently is not happy in Chicago. What do you make of this? Because someone said this to me. I have an unnamed source, who told me this a month or two ago, that keep an eye on Chicago training Zach LaVine and him not being happy there. And I didn't think that was it, because I was like, he's just signed that super massive extension to his contract. Surely, if there's going to be movement, it's going to be DeRozan, whose contract's going to expire, and Vucevic, whose contract's going to expire, rather than LaVine. But he seems unhappy there. What do you make of this situation with the Bulls?
Well, first, I got to get you thinking like an executive. You're beginning to fall into the category of moving players on the last year of a deal. When you acquire these players like Zach, when you
like DeMar and Vucevic,
DeMar DeRozan, okay. If you're an executive, of course you want those players, okay, provided you want to keep those players, but you also want to get bad contracts or longer tenured contracts off your books, which the Bulls aren't saying, oh, just give us your contracts you don't want, and we'll take those, and we'll give you what's called cap flexibility on the other end. Okay. So when these things are reported, not really, because it's bigger than that. Okay, now
it's also worth saying, whilst we're on that, the article goes on to say LaVine fought through a nagging knee injury issue through the second half of last season, showing tremendous resilience and fortitude to stay on the floor for the first postseason appearance of his career. LaVine could have undergone knee surgery during the season, but elected to wait until after the Bulls playoff run to ensure availability for his team. Now, it is worth noting, Zach LaVine is represented by Clutch Sports. Shams Charania, who wrote the article, is represented by Clutch Sports. So this is more of a piece coming from Zach LaVine and his team and his agency to, I don't know what their play is here to leverage the media in this, but that's what it sounded like to me.
Okay, that's what it sounds like. And listen, we just got done with the Knicks. Winning covers everything up. Then when you lose, when you win, you're not hot. When you lose, you're not that bad. But we in the media say when you win, they're the hottest team in the league. Okay. And when you lose, suddenly now everyone's unhappy. Last year, the Bulls were winning and no one said a word. So let's take a little dive into what's going on. So they say the Bulls and the Knicks, they're not seeing eye to eye. Well, if I'm maybe
the Bulls and LaVine.
So here's the thing. Okay, they're not seeing eye to eye. If I'm not mistaken, the Bulls paid him the max, right?
Yep.
Didn't they pay him that? That's like
as much
by
as
my calculation, they gave him everything that they could possibly give him. Is that not right?
That's correct.
Right? Okay. Let's stick to the facts here. By my calculation, or somewhere around there, he's over $200 million. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me get the exact figure.
All right. Okay.
Zach LaVine is $215 million for 5 years.
Okay. All right. Okay. So the Bulls showed up, said, hey, you're our guy. We're all in on you. Am I missing something here? Did they
No,
not say
that's
that?
what they said.
And they put
That's
their
what they
money
said.
where the okay, that's what they said. Okay, all right. So let's get that out of the way. Now, a report, right? There's no factual here. We're just saying it's a report. But now, let's you and I, Mo, what could he not be happy about? You go first.
Well, his play on the court, he's clearly hampered by his knee injury, so he's not been playing to the level that he would usually be accustomed to. But also the fact that when you watch the Bulls late in games, they do look very much like DeMar DeRozan's team. DeMar DeRozan will be taking a last shot. The offense will be going through him. And if you've just signed a max contract, that's not what you want to be seeing. You want to be the guy. You want to have the ball in your hands and you want it to be your team.
Okay. So I'm just going to methodically go through this. The Bulls stepped up to the plate.
Mm-hmm.
You within their organization from top to bottom, everyone said, this is our guy.
Mm-hmm.
This is our guy. We respect the fact that whatever the injury that he may have had in the second half of the season, we are willing. We're all in on Zach LaVine. So by all accounts, the Bulls are all in. So my question is, what's he unhappy about?
Mm-hmm.
What's he unhappy about? Like, okay, if he is unhappy, what's he unhappy about? What are they meeting about at this stage of the game? Now, when you give up 150 points, Mo, I'm thousands of miles away living out here in California, and I watched the game in Minnesota. What are we meeting about?
Mm-hmm.
Mo, it was obvious to me if you give up 150 points to a team that doesn't have Karl Anthony Towns, a team that doesn't have their other all-star, Rudy Gobert, and you give up 150 points, well, there's only one thing to talk about. Mm-hmm. That's called effort and energy. Effort and energy is absolutely necessary to play in this end, especially on the defensive end. And how many times, Mo, have you and I discussed what's the common denominator that all the good teams have? They all defend.
Mm-hmm.
This is everyone likes to say the game changes, and
they are missing their best defender in Lonzo Ball. However, there are still major issues on the defense.
They're missing. One player is not going to defend a team.
Yeah.
One player. That's a fact. Bo, they gave up 150 points. That's called a total breakdown.
Yep.
Now, for whatever the reason may be, Bo, they are not playing right now with the effort and energy necessary to win in this league. Because when you look at their roster, they have really good players, right? They have all-star caliber players. DeMar DeRozan, for instance, Zach LaVine, Vucevic. We know Caruso is a really good defensive player. He's a great basketball player.
Role player.
Okay. They have some really good players. For whatever the reason may be right now, they are not connected and playing together as a team. Okay. Mm-hmm. And one player is certainly not going to fix all of those problems. That's a problem where everyone's got to look at themselves and say, okay, let's go back to square one. Now, good win for them last night. But can they sustain this? Their problem is not offense.
Yeah.
Their problem is how are they going to defend on the other end? Mm-hmm. We all like to say this is a new era. This era is his. Ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not, last year the Golden State Warriors were really good on the defensive end. The Boston Celtics, they were the best defensive team in the league. Mm-hmm. The Milwaukee Bucks, they are an elite defensive team. Mm-hmm. The Cleveland, all of the best teams. It's the same story. Now, we love the storylines. Oh, this is a three-point shooting league, and this guy has a crossover, and this guy, okay, all those things are great. Mo, it's the same thing when it all boils down to. So right now, the Chicago Bulls have to push the reset button and say, our problem isn't scoring. Our problem isn't whose team it is. Our problem is, can we get stops.
We can't stop
Consecutive
anyone.
stops.
Yeah.
Right now, Mo, they're not stopping anyone. Okay. I watched them against the Bulls, the back-to-back game. They're not stopping anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And until that changes, okay, on the defensive end, then you're going to continue to have these same problems because, Mo, this is a league where if you get stops, it increases your chance significantly by winning games. And right now, if you just look at the top 4 or 5 teams in each conference, I'm willing to bet you all of those teams are somewhere in the upper half of the defensive ratings in this league. Why? Because that's necessary. You don't just play offense in this league. You have to play on both sides. And right now, the Bulls are struggling on the defensive end. And that's how this works. So when I hear those reports, okay, that's fine. That's great. That's good. Sounds good. However, if you want to know who the best teams are, just see who's playing the best, who's playing.
Well,
the most
defensive rating wise,
end.
you've got the Cavaliers, you've got the Bucks, you've got the Sixers, Clippers, Grizzlies,
Yes.
Pelicans, Knicks, Celtics, Heat,
Knicks.
Suns. That's top 10.
There,
right there.
there you go. There you
Worst
go.
defensive
And all those
team.
teams.
Well, it's interesting. Chicago, they're not in the bottom 10, but they're the I think they're like 13th or something in terms of having the worst one. San Antonio, Detroit, Houston, Charlotte, Utah, surprisingly now,
Mm-hmm.
Orlando, Denver, Portland, Washington, and the Warriors. Big surprise there.
There you go. And the Warriors right now are struggling. So I'm saying that's it. The Warriors last year, they're struggling. A staple of a Steve Kerr team, as much press and as much energy, deservingly so, they've gotten for the way they play on the offensive end, and certainly the way they shoot the basketball. They've been an excellent defensive group throughout the course of this run. Okay. There's 4 championships. They've been, I'm sure, probably higher, but they're without question, they've been in the top 5 every championship run they've had. So, that's necessary if you're going to win in this league, and if you're going to play consistent basketball. That's what you can do every night. That's effort and energy, which is required that you bring to the game as a player.
Mm-hmm. Well, the effort and energy we're going to have to remain to be seen by the Chicago Bulls as they try and turn their fortunes around. But that's another episode of the Hoop Genius podcast. Good times for Knicks fans, bad times for Bulls fans, and great times for listeners of this podcast. So make sure you subscribe, leave a review, leave a rating, because BJ and I will be back with more tomorrow from the world of the NBA. Don't go anywhere, and make sure you get buckets.